For 40 years, it was untouchable. The M1 Abrams, America's Iron Fist, a 70-ton Predator that obliterated entire armored divisions in hours. In the Gulf War, it killed over 3,000 enemy vehicles. It didn't lose a single tank to enemy fire. But in 2024 and 2025, something changed. A $20 million tank, the most feared ground weapon in human history, started getting killed. Not by other tanks, not by missiles from jets overhead, by drones that cost less than your phone. And the United States Army made a decision that shook the entire defense world. They canceled the next Abrams upgrade, scrapped it entirely, because the Abrams had become too heavy, too exposed, and too expensive to survive the modern battlefield. What comes next isn't just a new tank, it's the end of heavy armor as we know it. The M1 Abrams entered service in 1980. Its job was simple and brutal. Punch through Soviet armor on the plains of Central Europe and never stop moving. It never fought that war, but it proved its dominance everywhere else. Iraq, Kuwait, the Fulda Gap exercises. Every scenario the Abrams faced, it dominated. But dominance has a cost. To make the Abrams more survivable, the Army kept adding armor, reactive panels, trophy active protection, Tusk urban warfare kits, electronic warfare suites. By the time engineers started designing the M1A2 SEPV4, the planned next evolution, the tank had ballooned to nearly 78 tons. 78 tons. That's heavier than most bridges in Eastern Europe can handle. Heavier than most military transport aircraft can carry. Heavier than the logistics chain the U.S. Army actually has. The SEPV4 was canceled in 2024, and in its place, something completely different is being born. Here's the problem nobody wanted to say out loud. The Abrams is too heavy to fight, not in the desert where it was born, but in the real threat environments of the 2020s, Eastern Europe, the Pacific, urban warfare. Weight is a death sentence. NATO's eastern flank is laced with rivers. The bridges that cross them were designed for civilian traffic or Soviet-era equipment that weighed half as much. An Abrams at 78 tons will collapse infrastructure the Army needs to advance. In Ukraine, Russian T-72s and T-80s, far lighter, were still getting bogged down in mud and breaking down on roads. An Abrams would have been worse. Then there's airlift. A single C-17 can carry one Abrams. One. That's not rapid deployment. That's slow, expensive, and vulnerable. The Army needs to move fast. The Abrams refuses to let it. But wait was only problem number one. Problem number two arrived without warning, and it cost $500. In 2023 and 2024, the war in Ukraine became the world's most brutal live-fire laboratory. And what that laboratory proved changed everything. FPV drones, first-person view racing drones, the kind hobbyists fly on weekends, started killing main battle tanks. Not by accident, by design. A $500 drone loaded with a shaped charge, flown by a 19-year-old with a headset and a tablet, was hunting $20 million tanks. And it was working. By mid-2024, analysts had documented dozens of tank kills attributable to drone swarms and FPV strikes. Tanks weren't just being disabled, they were being mission-killed before they could engage a single target. The tactical formula that defined armored warfare for a century, mass your armor, punch through the line, exploit the gap, was suddenly brutally obsolete. Because here's what a $500 drone targets: the top, the rear, the engine deck. The areas that heavy composite armor was never designed to protect, because for decades, nothing could reach them. Tanks were built to fight other tanks. On the front, drone swarms don't care about the front. They come from above, from behind, from every direction simultaneously. The Abrams had an answer to this. The Trophy Active Protection System designed to shoot down incoming missiles. But Trophy wasn't built for small, fast, low-signature drones. Not yet. The Army was looking at a weapon system that had become, in certain environments, a very expensive, very heavy target. Something had to change. Everything had to change. The M1E3 isn't an upgrade, it's a reinvention. The Army didn't ask, how do we make the Abrams better? They asked a harder question. What does a tank need to be to survive and dominate the next 40 years? The answer dismantles nearly everything we know about tank design. First, the autoloader. For decades, American tank doctrine demanded a four-man crew: commander, gunner, driver, loader. The loader was sacred. Human hands, human judgment. Loading a 50-pound shell in seconds under fire. The M1E3 kills that job. An automated loading system in the kind Russian and French tanks have used for years, now dramatically improved, replaces the human loader entirely. The crew drops to 3. That single change allows something radical. Second, the unmanned turret. If there's no loader in the turret, the crew doesn't need to be there at all. The M1E3 concept moves all 3 crew members, commander, gunner, driver, into a protected capsule in the hull, below the turret ring, below the most exposed part of the tank. The turret becomes a weapons platform, not a crew compartment. That means it can be lower, sleeker, and built purely to kill, without being designed around keeping humans alive inside it. If a drone hits the turret, the crew survives. That's not incremental improvement. That's a complete rethinking of what a tank is. Third, hybrid electric drive. The M1's turbine engine is a marvel of power. It's also a thermal and acoustic beacon visible for miles. The M1E3's hybrid electric drive system introduces what the Army calls silent watch mode, the ability to run purely on battery power for limited operations. Movement, repositioning, ambush. A 70-ton vehicle that moves like a ghost. In urban terrain against drone operators listening for engine signatures, that capability is the difference between hunter and hunted. Fourth, AI-integrated active protection, Iron Fist, Trophy. The next generation of active protection isn't just faster, it's smarter. AI target discrimination learns to distinguish a bird from a drone, from an RPG, from an FPV attacker. It doesn't wait for a human to confirm, it decides in milliseconds. At 78 tons, the old Abrams could absorb a hit and keep fighting. The M1E3's philosophy is different: never get hit at all. And underlying all of this is the most important number the Army refuses to officially confirm, but every analyst is watching closely: weight. The M1E3's target combat weight is somewhere between 50 and 60 tons, 20 tons lighter than the system it replaces. Bridges open back up. C-17s can carry 2. Rapid deployment becomes real again. The tank survives by becoming, in some ways, less of what it was. Here's the real story the M1E3 tells. The age of the heavy tank, the era that started with the Tiger and the Sherman, that peaked with the Challenger and the Leopard and the Abrams, is ending. Not because tanks failed, but because the battlefield evolved faster than armor could. A $500 drone forced the United States Army to redesign a $20 million weapon system from the ground up. That's not a story about technology. That's a story about humility, about an institution powerful enough to look at its most feared weapon and say, this isn't enough anymore. The M1E3 isn't the death of the tank. It's the tank's next evolutionary leap, stripped of its old identity, rebuilt around a new reality. Lighter, smarter, quieter, deadlier. The question isn't whether this machine will dominate the next battlefield. The question is, what will the battlefield invent next to try to stop it? If you want to know what other weapon systems are being quietly reinvented right now, subscribe, because this story is just beginning.